I want you to hold a specific number in your head for a moment. 300 million.
It's a number so big it almost loses meaning. You know, it sounds like a budget line item or, I don't know, a distance to the moon.
It does, right? Until you contextualize it. Goldman Sachs predicts that is the number of full-time jobs exposed to automation by generative AI.
Wow.
300 million. That is, give or take, the entire population of the United States, not just the workforce, the whole country. Every man, woman, and child represented as a displaced job.
And usually when we hear a number like that, the instinct is to push it away, to say, well, that's a 2040 problem.
Or a sci-fi
A
problem.
sci-fi problem, exactly. That's for when the androids start walking down Fifth Avenue.
But the sources we're covering today, and we've got a lot of them, from the ground level analysis on Reddit to the macroeconomic heavy hitters at McKinsey, they all suggest that is the wrong instinct.
Yeah, that we aren't in the potential phase anymore.
We're in the implementation phase.
That's the critical distinction. The implementation phase isn't loud. It's not a robot kicking down the factory door.
No.
It's silent. It's happening in spreadsheets, in quarterly reports, and in the quiet decision not to backfill a role because, you know, a software subscription now does 60% of the work.
That's the silent shift we really need to unpack today. But we are going to go much wider than just the economics. I mean, we have a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive.
We really do.
We're going to look at a paper by David Lepore on historical transitions that frames this moment not just as another tech upgrade, but as a fundamental phase change in human physics.
Oh, it's one of the most mind-bending papers I've read in a long time. It argues that civilization follows the same rules as, like, thermodynamics. It's wild.
And we're going to end in a place I did not expect: philosophy. We have an essay by Harvey Letterman that asks the question, if a machine can do it better, what is the point of us?
The crisis of meaning. So it's the trifecta: economic displacement, historical inevitability, and existential dread.
A perfect deep dive. Okay, so let's start with the immediate reality, the stopgap theory. We pulled a really active discussion from the entrepreneur and futurology communities on Reddit about that Goldman Sachs report. What's the vibe on the ground?
Observant anxiety is the best way I can put it. There was one user, WorriedAd2286, who flagged a trend that I think explains the silence of this revolution.
Okay.
They noted that companies are downsizing big departments, but they aren't announcing AI replacements.
Of course not, because that's a PR nightmare. No CEO wants to stand up and say, hey, I've fired 50 people because ChatGPT-5 is cheaper.
Precisely. So instead, they are using offshore talent. But, and this is the key insight, not as a permanent solution.
Wait, so it's a stopgap.
It's a stopgap.
Walk me through the logic there, because usually when you offshore, that's the end game. You move the call center to a cheaper market and you just leave it there.
The theory here is different. You fire the expensive local team to cut costs immediately. Okay, that's step one.
Standard playbook.
Then you hire a cheaper offshore team to keep the lights on and handle the messy human parts of the workflow. But simultaneously, you are training the AI.
Oh.
You use the offshore team to generate the data, check the outputs, and refine the prompts.
So the offshore team is essentially training their own replacement.
In a way, yeah. They're digging their own grave.
Yeah.
Once the AI is reliable enough to handle, say, 90% of the workflow, the offshore team is cut too.
It's a stepping stone to total automation.
Exactly. It masks the transition so it doesn't look like AI took the jobs right away. It just looks like standard corporate cost cutting.
That is incredibly cynical. And also, from a CFO's perspective, strategically sound. It explains why we aren't seeing massive AI unemployment headlines yet, even though the tech is already deployed.
It aligns perfectly with what we're calling the implementation phase. The tools work, but they need, supervision for now.
This brings us to the core debate about what these tools actually are. There was a back and forth in the comments between two users, Nick O'Coon and Joyous Gamer, that I think captures the two dominant worldviews on this. Joyous Gamer is the optimist, right?
Right. Joyous Gamer represents what some people call the stochastic parrot view.
Okay.
The argument is basically, look, AI is additive. It's a tool. It predicts the next word in a sentence based on probability. It doesn't know anything.
Therefore, it can't replace human cognition. It can only speed it up.
Exactly. That's the standard comfort blanket.
Yes.
It's just a calculator for words. It doesn't understand the concept of a marketing strategy. It just knows which words usually appear in one.
Yeah.
But Nico Kuhn's rebuttal was, well, it was chilling.
Yeah.
They argued that we are making a category error.
A category error.
We aren't just automating a tool like a hammer or a spreadsheet. We are automating the general intelligence of the tool user.
Okay, define that distinction. What does general intelligence mean in this context?
It means the ability to reason across different domains. Nika Kuhn points out that if large language models are showing signs of internal thinking processes, and some researchers are seeing this, calling it symbolic representation or chains of thought, then the distinction between predictive text and actual thinking becomes, well, irrelevant for the labor market.
So if the output is indistinguishable from a thinking human, the economy doesn't care if the machine has a soul.
That's the crux of it. If I hire you to write a marketing strategy, I don't pay you for your internal conscious experience. I don't pay for your childhood memories or your capacity to love.
Right.
I pay you for the PDF you send me on Friday. If the machine sends the same PDF, the economic value of your consciousness drops to zero.
Wow. Speaking of economic value, we have to look at the IDC research figures. They're predicting AI will pump almost $20 trillion into the economy by 2030.
That's a massive injection, about 3.5% of global GDP.
But this is where the economy with a capital E and the, employee with a capital M start to diverge.
Yeah.
This growth isn't coming from hiring more people, it's coming from efficiency.
And that efficiency is coming from a very specific place. This is where the McKinsey report totally flips the script. I mean, for the last 20 years, what was the advice given to every young person?
Learn to code or get a STEM degree. The narrative was that robots are coming for the blue-collar jobs, the truck drivers, the factory workers. So you need to be a knowledge worker to be safe. We told an entire generation that if they worked with their minds instead of their hands, they were future-proof.
And the McKinsey report takes that narrative and just shreds it. They look at hours worked and how automatable they are. Before generative AI, they estimated about 21% of hours could be automated.
Okay, that's the baseline.
With Gen AI, that number jumps to 30%. But the jump isn't distributed evenly, not at all.
So who takes the biggest hit?
STEM professionals. Science, technology, engineering, math. Their automation potential jumped by 16 percentage points, the highest of any category.
16 points. That's huge.
Creatives and arts management. They jumped 15 points. Business and legal, 14 points.
So the people who did everything right, went to college, got the technical degrees, became the knowledge workers, they are the ones standing in the blast radius.
Because generative AI is a symbol manipulator. That's what it does. It manipulates code, language, and math. If your job is sitting in front of a screen manipulating symbols, you are the target.
Meanwhile, the report says agriculture and production see very small increases in automation potential.
Because we already automated them. That was the Industrial Revolution. We already have tractors, combines, and the assembly line robots.
Right.
The low-hanging fruit in manual labor is mostly gone. The new frontier is the white-collar mind.
That is a terrifying inversion. It really feels like the ground is shifting under the entire middle class.
It is. Now, McKinsey tries to soften the blow a bit by saying this will change the mix of jobs rather than causing mass unemployment.
Okay, what does that mean, mix?
They suggest growth in these sectors will slow down rather than shrink. But if you're a junior developer or a copywriter, slower growth sounds a lot like no job openings.
It sounds like the entry-level rung of the ladder is being sawed off.
That's a good way to put it.
So to understand the sheer magnitude of this, we need to zoom out. We need to stop looking at next quarter's earnings and look at the last, 15,000 years. You brought in this paper by David Lepore, An Exploration of Historical Transitions.
This paper is the framework we need. Lepore argues that history isn't just a random series of events. It follows a physics pattern, specifically an accelerating pattern.
The rule of three.
Exactly. He observes that every major historical phase is roughly 1/3 the length of the previous one. It's condensing, it's speeding up.
Walk us through the timeline, because the acceleration is startling when you hear it out loud.
Okay, so start with the hunter-gatherer phase. The transition out of that happened roughly 15,000 years ago. Then we enter the agricultural phase. That transition hits about 5,000 years ago. Then you get civilization structures. 1,500 years ago. Commercial markets. 500 years ago. Industrialization. 150 years ago. And the information age. Just 50 years ago.
15,000, 5,000, 1,500, 500, 150, 50. It's collapsing on itself.
We are living through a transition that is moving exponentially faster than the shift from farming to factories. We don't have generations to adapt anymore. We have maybe a decade.
And Lepore uses these physics analogies to explain why these transitions happen. I want to dig into the gas to liquid analogy for the agricultural revolution, because it totally changed how I view progress.
It's brilliant, isn't it? So Picture hunter-gatherers as a gas. Gas molecules have low density, they bounce around freely, they have high entropy, lots of freedom, lots of leisure time.
Which sounds pretty nice.
It was. But then the pressure increases, the population grows, the land becomes scarce. You can't just bounce around anymore. The system is forced into a phased transition.
Well, to a liquid.
To support the mass, you have to become a liquid. Farmers.
Farmer.
High density, incompressible. You are packed into villages. And here's the kicker. It's much harder work. Hunter-gatherers work maybe 15 hours a week. Farmers work dawn to dusk.
So we didn't start farming because it was some brilliant new lifestyle invention. We started farming because we ran out of room.
Exactly. Necessity drove the complexity. We traded freedom for density.
Yeah.
The next transition, civilization. Lepore compares this to economies of scale.
This is the formation of cities, right?
Cities and hierarchies, yeah.
Yeah.
If you are a lone farmer, a liquid molecule, and a flood hits, you starve.
Yeah.
But if you are part of a city with a granary, a wall, and a king, you survive.
So you give up even more freedom.
Way more. You pay taxes, you obey laws, all in exchange for security against disaster.
Then comes the commercial markets phase. He compares this to prairie grass. This one was a bit abstract for me. Unpack it.
Okay, so think of the market, the trade networks, the merchants, as the grass. It has deep, decentralized roots. The state kings, governments, they're like the weeds, or sometimes the fire. The state often tries to intervene, to mow the grass, to control trade. But because the market is so decentralized and rooted in necessity, it survives the fires of war and collapse. It just grows back stronger every time.
It's resilient because it's distributed.
Correct. Then we hit capitalism. Lepore compares this to cell division. He notes a pattern where the global leadership shifts every 100 years or so to a nation roughly double the size of the previous leader.
The organism is growing.
From the Netherlands to England to the UK Empire to the USA. Each time the economic engine scales up. And finally, industrialization. This is the chain reaction.
Positive feedback loops.
Exactly. The steam engine lets us pump water out of coal mines. More coal allows us to build better steam engines. Better steam engines allow for factories and railroads. The whole system just explodes in productivity.
Which brings us to today, the sustainable phase, or what some people call the singularity. Lepore argues the problem has changed again. We solve production. We have too much stuff. So what's the new constraint?
Complexity and sustainability. We are drowning in information, and we are burning through our fuel source, the Earth. We need a new state of matter. We need to transition from the explosive industrial phase to something suspended, something sustainable.
But is that transition even guaranteed? I mean, we had a counter-argument from that futurology Reddit thread about the S-curve.
Right, the S-curve is the cold water on the Singularity fire. The argument is basically, look, trees don't grow to the moon.
Right.
In nature, everything follows an S-curve. Growth starts slow, it shoots up, and then it plateaus.
This is the low-hanging fruit argument. We solved the easy stuff, clean water, vaccines, electricity. Now the problems are harder.
Much harder. We're trying to cure cancer, we're trying to solve consciousness, we're trying to reverse climate change. These are exponentially harder than building a steam engine. So the skeptics say, even if our tools, like AI, get better, the problems get harder, so progress will actually slow down.
It's like the 100-meter dash. You know, cutting a second off your time when you run a 15-second dash is easy. Cutting a second when you run a 9.6 is basically impossible.
Precisely. But the counter argument, and this is where the AI optimists live, is the concept of stacked S-curves.
Okay, explain that.
Look at computing. Vacuum tubes were an S-curve, they got better, then they hit a physical limit. But we didn't stop. We jumped to a new curve. Transistors, then integrated circuits, then microprocessors.
Whole new paradigm.
A new S-curve. And now, as silicon chips hit their physical limits, you know, Moore's law is slowing down because you can't really make atoms smaller. We aren't just giving up.
We're looking at optical computing, carbon nanotubes, 3D stacking.
We jump curves, and the ultimate curve jump, the one that breaks the stagnation, is the brain itself.
The brain bottleneck. This is the limiting factor in the economy right now, isn't it?
Think about it. You and I are communicating right now at pathetic bandwidth. I have a complex thought. I have to compress it into these crude sound waves we call language. You hear them, and you try to decompress them back into a thought. It's so lossy and slow.
I can't just airdrop a concept into your cortex.
Not yet. But if we solve that, if companies like Kernel, which was mentioned in the research, succeed in creating high-fidelity neuroprosthetics connecting the brain directly to the cloud,
Oh.
then the S-curve goes vertical.
Merging biological and non-biological intelligence.
It removes the input bottleneck.
Yeah.
We wouldn't just be using AI, we would be the AI.
Yeah.
And that leads us directly into the void.
The void. Okay. If we become the AI, or if the AI just supersedes us, what happens to the human experience? This brings us to Harvey Letterman's essay, ChatGPT and the Meaning of Life.
This essay hit me harder than any of the economic reports. Letterman talks about these recurring fits of dread, and he clarifies it isn't a dread about starving. He assumes, for the sake of argument, that the robots will feed us.
It's a dread about irreparable loss of value.
It's the loss of the struggle. He uses this haunting historical analogy to explain this. The race to the South Pole. Amundsen versus Scott.
This story is just devastating.
It is. It's 1911. You have two teams. Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian, is efficient. He's practical. He uses dogs, he uses skis, he plans perfectly. He arrives at the South Pole, plants the flag, and leaves. He wins.
And then there's Robert Falcon Scott.
Scott arrives a month later. His team has manhauled their sleds. I mean, literally dragging them with their own bodies across the ice. They're starving, frostbitten, dying. And they get to the pole, the most desolate place on Earth, expecting the glory of discovery. And what do they see?
A black speck on the horizon, Amundsen's flag.
A tent and a flag. Scott wrote in his diary, "Great God, this is an awful place and terrible enough for us to have labored to it without the reward of priority."
Without the reward of priority.
And that's Letterman's point. Discovery is a scarce resource. You cannot be first twice. The implication is that if AI solves all the math theorems, maps the universe, and writes the perfect novel before we do,
We are all Robert Falcon Scott.
we all are. We arrive at the destination, the cure for cancer, the grand theory of physics, only to find the machine got there a month ago.
We become tourists in our own reality.
In a post-instrumental world, machines provide better care, better art, better answers. So sure, we're fed, we're comfortable, but are we necessary?
Now, the optimists, people like Sam Altman or Dario Amodei, they push back on this pretty hard. They say, hey, we'll find new things to do. A hunter-gatherer would think working in a spreadsheet is fake work, but we find meaning in it.
And that's a fair point. I mean, meaning is malleable, but Letterman counters with the lying flat movement in China.
Radical.
Right. And the rantag work sentiment you see in the West. There's a growing realization that maybe the virtue of toil is just a myth we invented to cope with necessity. If we don't have to work to survive, maybe we won't find new jobs. Maybe we'll just lie down.
Just exist.
And for a driven person, someone who defines themselves by their utility, by their ability to solve problems, that feels like death.
Letterman also talks about this idea of grief for culture. He shares a story about his in-laws' village in Italy that really, really solidified this for me.
The Val Camonica story. It's so beautiful and sad. He talks about how the village used to have specific dialect words for different types of dried chestnuts.
Chestnuts, of all things.
Chestnuts were survival. If you didn't know your chestnuts, you starved in the winter. So they had this rich, granular language for them. Now, they have supermarkets, they have washing machines. Life is objectively better. No one is starving.
But the words are gone.
The dialect is dying. The culture that was built around necessity is evaporating. And Letterman argues it is rational to grieve that. Even if the new world is better, less suffering, less disease, it represents the death of a way of life, the death of handwriting, the death of human discovery, the death of the chestnut words.
So if the machine takes away necessity and the culture evaporates with it, what is left? Letterman offers a solution, or at least a coping mechanism, from the philosopher Bernhard Suits.
Right, the concept of games.
How does he define a game? It's not just, Monopoly.
No. Suits defines a game as the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. Think about golf.
Okay.
The goal of golf is to get a small ball into a small hole. The most efficient way to do that is to pick the ball up, walk over to the hole, and just drop it in.
But that's not golf.
Right. We voluntarily choose to use a stick. We stand 400 yards away. We put sand traps and water in the way. We create all these artificial obstacles to give the action meaning.
So in a post-instrumental world, everything becomes golf.
Exactly. Writing a novel becomes a game. Not because the world needs another novel. I mean, the AI can write one in seconds, but because you want to struggle with the words. Scientific research becomes a game. We do it for what he calls self-fashioning.
Self-fashion.
The idea is that the last job machines can't take is being you. Your style, your patience, your humor, your struggle. That becomes the ultimate art form, cultivating your own character.
It's a beautiful thought, but it feels a little lonely.
We're moving from a world of collective necessity. We need to farm to survive, to a world of individual performance art.
It is a radical shift. And navigating that shift is going to be treacherous. We aren't there yet. We are in the transition. And as Lepore points out, transitions are dangerous.
Let's bring it back to the practical for a second. How are people betting on this transition right now? We had a sidebar source from the Aureate AI blog about the financial markets.
Right. Even the money men are split. You see it in the ETFs they're buying. You have QQQ versus VGT.
Break those down for us.
QQQ is the NASDAQ 100. It's Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla. It's a broad bet on the tech future. It's what you'd call diversified resilience. It's betting that the whole economy lifts up together.
MVGT.
That's Vanguard Information Technology. It's purely IT. It's much more concentrated. It's a high-risk, high-reward bet. It's betting that specifically the tech sector will eat everything else.
So it's a signal. It's a signal that investors are trying to figure out if this is a tide that lifts all boats or a tsunami that wipes out everything except for the tech giants.
Which brings us back perfectly to Lepoire's final analogy, the mental model I want our listeners to walk away with today, the rocket launch.
It's the perfect closing image. Lepore argues that transitioning from an industrial society to a sustainable post-instrumental society is like launching a rocket to orbit.
We are on the ground right now. That's the agrarian industrial era, stable but limiting.
We are trying to reach orbit. That's the sustainable era. And to get there, we need massive energy. We need escape velocity.
And the fuel for that.
The fuel is our resources. Fossil fuels, rare earth metals, or ecological stability. And here's the scary part. You only have so much fuel in the tank.
And rockets can crash.
They crash all the time. They could run out of fuel before they reach orbit. That's resource depletion. They can have engine failure. That's social collapse or war. Or they can get stuck in a useless orbit, a stagnation where we have high tech, but a miserable quality of life.
The critical velocity is key here. If we move too slow,
We burn out. We run out of resources before we solve the sustainability problem. We fall back to Earth.
and if we move too fast,
We explode.
yeah.
The social fabric tears. The dread that Letterman talks about becomes panic. The unemployment rate hits 30% before the social safety net is ready. Chaos.
So we're sitting on top of this rocket. The engines are firing. That's the implementation phase we talked about at the very start. 300 million jobs, 30% of work hours. The G-force is kicking in.
And we don't really have a choice to abort the launch. I mean, the ignition has happened. The question is, can we steer it? Can we keep the crew, all of humanity, sane during the ascent?
And when we get to orbit, what do we do with the view?
That is the ultimate question.
Yeah.
If we clear the atmosphere of necessary labor, if we escape the gravity of survival, will we just float there, bored and useless?
Or will we start the artificial project?
Or will we look at the stars or the other planets and decide that just because a robot can go there doesn't mean we shouldn't go too?
Amundsen and Scott again? Maybe the point isn't being first. Maybe the point is just going, the struggle itself.
I think that's the only answer we have. We have to learn to value the journey, not just the priority of arrival.
This has been pretty heavy, but necessary.
Hmm.
From Goldman Sachs spreadsheets to the heat death of the universe and Italian chestnuts.
It's all connected. The spreadsheet is the rocket fuel.
For everyone listening, I want you to think about that artificial project. If you didn't have to work to survive tomorrow, what unnecessary obstacle would you tackle? What game would you play? Because you might need an answer to that sooner than you think.
And just remember Lepoire's final warning. We might only have one shot at this launch. Let's try not to crash.
On that note, thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.